It's that special time in your life again. It's classic game room time. Get your PSP ready for some action and adventure with Ratchet and Clank. Size matters. Judge this Ratchet and Clank adventure on the PSP by its size, do you? Well, that would be a mistake because it's big adventure on the small screen with awkward controls. It's Ratchet and Clank. Size Matters, which is a cheeky, giggle-inducing title for those of us with second-grade mentalities. I don't get it. Most of the Ratchet and Clank games have silly titles. This one is no exception, but it's relevant because you're miniaturized. At some point in the game, it turns into Honey, I Shrunk My Favorite Video Game Heroes to battle the Technomites who clone Ratchet and are out to take over the universe. This is like most of the other Ratchet and Clank games, except the controls are really awkward because the PSP does not have dual analog thumbsticks, something that I think Ratchet and Clank really needs. So you can run around with the one thumbstick and then you strafe with the D-pad and rotate the camera with the top two buttons. It just doesn't really work all that well compared to the bigger Ratchet and Clank adventures on the PlayStation 2 or PlayStation 3, but the game itself is consistently good. The dialogue and storyline aren't quite as witty as those found in Going Commando Up Your Arsenal or the original one, but it's still a competent adventure, especially considering it's a portable one that borrows a lot from the bigger titles in the series, like upgradable weapons, leveling up health, and lots of wacky gadgets. As a fan of the Ratchet and Clank series, I enjoy this game a lot, but if you jump into it after playing some of the other ones, the controls are clumsy because it's really hard to fight in confined areas when you can't rotate the camera or aim without sliding your thumb onto the D-pad and hitting select to zoom. I can only imagine the designers were frustrated they didn't have more controls to work with, so it's probably not their fault. This one is from High Impact Games instead of Insomniac, and it follows the traditional tried and true Ratchet and Clank adventure formula. You start off relaxing on an island or something, only to be hired by this little girl who's actually... Here's a little spoiler alert. Giving you time to stop the video, but you're not going to, so... She's a robot!
Clank! Oh, no.
Actually, she's like a robotic exoskeleton controlled by Technomites, who are like the universe's smallest assholes. And you shrink yourself to fight them. In fact, one of the key features is that you fight through Clank. It's like inner space, without a really hot Meg Ryan. Eventually, I got used to the controls and figured out this little backflip move where I could keep my aim, but on the whole, this really screams for a PS2 or PS3 DualShock controller. But the game itself is pretty good. It feels like Grand Theft Auto Vice City Stories or something. You know, a bigger game that could have been on the PlayStation 2 and eventually was. In fact, this later received a PlayStation 2 release. If you're a fan of this series, I would pick this up because it's more of what you already like. It's more Ratchet and Clank. They really haven't changed much with this game. New plot, some wacky weapons, and creative environments, but that's what you would expect from the series anyway. This one just happens to be smaller. Like the other games in the series, you bounce around the universe, and here's a neat part where you can actually upgrade each of the individual weapons with some cool new features. It's fun, it's Ratchet and Clank. Size matters. This one was sent to the show by our familiar friend, Felicity from Worcestershire, England, proving that European games play in American PlayStation portables. The game looks and sounds good enough, but that scene right there shows the problem with the controls. You end up just bouncing all over the screen because you can't really control the camera rotation fast enough to keep up. I did not have a chance to play with them, but this has some multiplayer options, although Ratchet and Clank is really a single-player game, a single-player adventure. High Impact later went on to make Secret Agent Clank, which was also sent to the show by Felicity. So, once again, thank you, and for fans of this series, yes, I would recommend it because it's more Ratchet and Clank, and more is always better, especially when it's smaller. Like a bag of little tiny combos, you can't have just one, which is why I eat the entire bag at once. Doesn't everybody? Alright, now come on, audio, let's keep up with the action!